Welcome to Spirit Blog. Okay, pulling the boat out of the garage. Mast joint clears by about an inch. And my boom crutch clears the door by about an inch and a half. Crunch. Okay, that's a pretty good idea. That's what it takes to get the boat out of the garage. I thought I would talk today a little bit about the boat, which I called Spirit. Here's one of the little gizmos. This is my third time around figuring out where to put the electric motor. But I finally came up with this kind of a thing. Thought I was being really clever because the water line is right about here. But as soon as you put a person in or two people in, the water line is more like up here, and I introduced drag. But at least I've got something that works out fairly well. Homemade cleat, piece of rope, homemade handle made from a piece of dowel, drop it in there. To get it back up, it takes really two hands to do it, but you have to pull it up and then wrap the cleat and it stays. I use the cleat instead of one of those cam cleats because they start at $20 and go up to like $40 and $50, whereas this thing cost me about an hour and a half a time and maybe $1. So that's my cheap solution. I'm also, for you people that are wondering about the camera, I'm using a Kodak Zi8 with the little remote control and wireless microphone. In fact, the wireless microphone cost me as much as the camera. Keep this in the pocket. See? Almost hidden. That's how we do that. One of the things that I did at the beginning was I rigged the whole boat with white nylon rope. That seemed like a good idea at the time. It was cheap. But the first time I put a guest on the boat and told him to raise the main, he asked me, "Which one's that?" So he was sitting there looking forward, and I said, "Well, use the ropes on your right side, or the lines." He turned around and looked at me and said, "What?" And I said, "On the right side, pull those lines." So since he was facing me, he did this and grabbed these, which were on the front sail. I didn't say port and starboard because they had no clue what those were. So I decided to re-rig the entire boat with color coding. So now I've got a yellow, I've got a red, and on the other side I have blue and green. So now I can say, pull on the yellow, pull on the green. I still haven't figured out the port and starboard, how to explain that. I think I'm going to have to put signs on the boat to explain port and starboard. Of course, as soon as I explain it, people will say that makes sense. They just don't remember it. I mean, you do know the story. On ancient times, they steered a boat with a board, and since most guys are right-handed, they put it on the right side. So the steer board became the starboard, and it doesn't do any good to get your steering board stuck between the boat and the dock. So they turned around and called the other side the port side, because that's always the side you put against the port. That's really as simple as it counts. But nobody can remember all of that when you say starboard. So I guess I should put some signs up here that say port and starboard so somebody can turn around and look and go, "Oh yeah, that side." Whatever. But it's still useful to have them color coded. I also did another thing. The inside lines are what raises the sails, whereas the outside lines, the one that tie toward the back, adjust the sails. So far, nobody's caught on to that either, but I tried. Another goofy thing I did was that when I was trying to run the boat, I was constantly looking over the back to see which direction my rudder was pointed. For some reason, I didn't seem to figure that out. So I put a stick on the rudder so I didn't have to go looking over the end. And that seems to be working out okay. I think I'm going to put some stain on it and put a couple of eye screws on it and stick a flag on it so it looks like it was intended instead of a stick. But it's just a 5/8 inch dowel. The other thing I did, I'll have to go get it. I bought a pair of walkie-talkies because when you're trying to coordinate boat and camera on the dock, it gets a little awkward. So I bought these Uniden units for about 90 bucks. And they have a range of quite a number of miles, so that's further away than from the dock than I will probably ever get. So I decided to do that, and that worked out pretty good because when I had trouble with the boat and the guy on the dock running the camera knew what was wrong and knew to turn off the camera instead of watching me flounder around for a while. So that was kind of useful, but you may not want to go the expense of one of these things. Or you may. They're a lot of fun. There's another little gizmo that I made that you may or may not want, but I just had to do it. I made a little gizmo to mount the camera. This is just a 1/4 bolt, and I put an insert in it and used a hole saw to come up with this little roundy thing. And I put it on a swivel. The way I built the swivel is that I used a skateboard bearing, put it inside the shaft here, and you have to use 2 different size bits, one to fit the bearing and the other one to fit the bolt. And then I get this kind of a gizmo. And I put it on the board, and the board goes across the companionway, right in there. So as the boat tilts this way, the camera stays fairly level, and if it tilts this way. The only drawback is that if it's a little choppy, it does this. And it takes about 5 or 6 cycles to settle down and finally become stable. But you see, if you're sailing and you're on a bit of an angle, at least the camera stays straight, and it gives you a little bit more impression, because what I never liked was the idea of the background bounced and the boat didn't. It seemed to me that the boat was the one that was bouncing, not the shore. So that's why I built this little gizmo. Like I say, you may or may not want it to go to such craziness, but I get a kick out of the shop work. So have fun, enjoy.